Hey everybody, welcome to the Herd Fit Podcast with Dr. Sam Rhee and myself, Coach David Syvertsen. This podcast is aimed at helping anyone and everyone looking to enhance their healthy lifestyle through fitness, nutrition, and most importantly, mindset.
All right, welcome back to the Herd Fit Podcast. I am Coach David Syvertsen. I'm here with my co-host, Dr. and Coach Sam Rhee. Just two guys here chatting, just calling it a podcast. To quote Brittany RC for the holiday party.
That's right.
So going to dive right into the topic today. And we're getting 2 episodes recorded for the next 2 weeks. And then a few of us are headed off to Legends next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So we might not be back for a week after that. We'll try to get in. But today we're going to kind of cram 2 in. And the first one is actually something that I am taking on right now for the first time. Probably a little too late on this. I probably should have done this in official fashion a few years ago. But this is the first time I'm writing actual coach evaluations for every coach at CrossFit Bison. There are 12 of us. Really, there's about 8 or 9 of us that are on the every week schedule throughout the year. And I kind of want to dive into, without talking about them specifically, this is all like private, confidential information. I would never throw them out under the bus or even praise them individually, out of respect for them. If there are any examples of good and bad, I'll just make sure it's one of us, and so that you guys can get a clear picture of what we're saying. But I want to talk about why I'm doing this for the first time and why I believe I should have done it a few years ago. Sam, I know you're probably super nervous about your coaching review that you're going to get, but I will say this about Sam. Sam has always asked for criticism. He doesn't really want to know what he did well. I'm sure he doesn't mind hearing it, but he always wants to know what he could do to get better at coaching, whether it's clock management, class management, pairings, all this stuff. There's so much that goes into it. And Sam is a very well-respected, successful surgeon. He's been around a lot longer than me. He's much more educated than I am. So what is your response to someone like me, Sam, giving you a sheet of paper and being like, hey, Sam, this is what you're good and bad at your part-time job that, you, if you wanted to, could leave tomorrow and ride off into the sunset. What's your initial thought on me giving you a review based on your performance as a coach?
Why didn't you do this years ago? I think if you listen to any of the coaching or CrossFit, best hour of their day.
Yep, they're huge on that.
Those two would have been like, dude, what are you doing? Why haven't you? Like, this is a given. And I would say I am so used to being getting constructive criticism, let's put it that way. And sometimes it was just absolutely brutal back in the day, like when I was in training, like literally it would come with expletives and shaming and you name it. So I'm used to negative, feedback.
And you think it helped?
Yeah.
Big picture.
I mean, it didn't have to come with all the expletives and all the.
I don't have any expletives.
All the name calling, but absolutely, there's no way to get better. And there is a surgeon, Atul Gawande, who has he's from Harvard and he's written quite a bit. And one of the biggest things that he talks about surgery being just like being an airline pilot or many other professions. Mm-hmm. And one of the things is feedback and review. And you know me, I know when you start a job, like especially me, like I didn't know anything about coaching. I didn't know anything about teaching people how to move through space with barbells and gymnastics and like all of these things. Mm-hmm. So my knowledge was hugely deficient, and my application of teaching this was also really deficient. So I really needed as much feedback as possible to try to get better. Okay. And I know that's the only way to get better.
Yeah. There's a certain point where you'll plateau in whatever profession, whatever performance you're undergoing if you never get feedback. You can get better on your own. You can self-teach and self-critique, but if you never have an outside voice, you're simply just never probably going to get to your peak. Now, who is that voice matters, right? What is their agenda, if you will? Those are important factors to consider when someone is constructively criticizing / evaluating your performance. So reason why I haven't done this in the past is a few things. No excuses here, just reasons, so you guys can understand where I'm coming from. One, I have given feedback to every single coach.
You have.
Over the years. It just hasn't been in written form.
Right.
And it's just been like, hey, I think you guys need to get better at this. Hey, Dave, what can I do to speed this up? Here you go. And I've also developed most of our coaches from interning, right? Every single one of our coaches, minus Mike and Chris and Ash, and even Ash, I would even say did intern for a while, were interns here.
Yeah.
They were interns before they started, we set them out free. And part of that intern process was, we have a process for it. I don't want to dive into it, but there was a lot of critiquing there. One thing we never did that Hoboken did for us is we had to meet on weekends and teach each other how to do movements, and we would critique each other. We didn't do that kind of stuff, but I did critique how Sam taught a beginner a sumo deadlift high pull, or how they, managed the class of 24 at 6 a.m. prior to actually coaching the class themselves. So to me, that was an evaluation. And then building from there, I did give certain critiques when something really stood out. The problem with that is I would only offer advice or critique after something wrong happened. And I think part of evaluating a coach is that, but part of evaluating a coach and developing them is to prevent problems from occurring. And I think that's where there's an issue with the way I handled it. The other side of it is, honestly, I swept it under the rug a few times, where I'm so busy here. Like I do so many jobs and wear so many hats. And then, there's a life outside of here as well that I always kind of just said, hey, I'll do it eventually. And then it's like one of those things. It's like how I am with my laundry. Oh, I'll put it away tonight. 4 days later, it's still there. And that's on me. I should have been like a better in that kind of like leadership role where if I feel like something needs to be done to make the gym and coach better, you got to find a way to get it done. It's got to be a priority. And I did not make it a priority.
And to be fair, like I said, you did give a lot of verbal feedback.
Absolutely,
and coaching.
yeah.
And I would ask you, what do you think about this or that? The other thing is that not to say that our coaches are so effing awesome or anything, but compared to other boxes, but if you're not getting a ton of negative feedback from the athletes, from everyone else, then it's more like easy to let it go. Yep. Because you're not putting out fires. You already have 500 fires that you got to put out.
Right.
So it's like, yes, should you be elevating your coaching level, their competency and how they are? Absolutely. But if they're meeting a sort of a minimum required to keep classes going, that everyone is relatively happy and everything's going well and the gym is growing, it wasn't like you're like, oh my God, I have to do this or everything will fall apart. And so it does sometimes get, pushed to the back a little bit.
Yeah. It's more about being less proactive and more reactionary. So the reactions were never there because we haven't had a lot of complaints. And honestly, we have had a few over the years and they have been addressed. As recent as honestly last week, where something happened with a coach athlete, where human beings were not perfect and something did not get done the way it should have got done. And you go right away to that coach and say, hey, this is what you got. You always have the coach's back. Like I'm never going to throw a coach under the bus to a member, especially. Right. But, that coach does get talked to if something comes up and you deem it as, okay, that's a problem. My last reason, again, not excuse, something that I've struggled with in leadership position here is I'm friends with our coaches.
Yep.
And some better than others, I will say that. But I do consider all of them as friends. Like I could give any one of them a call and ask for advice. I could expect a call from any one of them and be asked for advice, right? And those situations have come up over the years. And one of the most difficult things in my position is trying to separate business/boss and the fact that we have a friendship. Our wives are friends with each other's wives, all that stuff. And, we have a very tight-knit group here and you don't want to fracture that. It can be really tough at times to play both sides. I don't think I've ever told any one of our coaches, I'm your boss. I don't think that's ever come out of my mouth. Has it?
I don't know. I don't know. I will say this. You do I think the number one thing for you, and I think for most owners, is they have to trust their coaches.
Right.
Like trust over everything. It doesn't matter how, and I've heard others high-level CrossFit people say this, if you can mold people into being good coaches for the most part, not everyone. But if you can't trust them, then it doesn't matter how much knowledge they have, how much skill they have at the end of the day. And I've seen you work with and select coaches, and it was really hugely on trust. And who do you trust? Your friends. Like you really, really have to trust these people. And if you trust them, they're going to be your friends. So I think that it's hard, like you said, being a boss, trusting people who are your friends.
Right.
And then sitting there and saying, you suck at coaching, like coaching snatches or whatever it is, or you need
to be better at this.
Right.
Right.
And I think also that's also why it's incumbent on every box, every athlete to go to your coaches, go to the owner and say, listen, I want to give feedback, because that's the only way in a huge way that we're going to get better. And I've said this time and time again. I've posted it in our Facebook group. Listen, you have to hold us accountable. Dave doesn't have eyes on everybody 24/7.
Right.
You might think he does.
Yeah.
but he doesn't. And so, right. So if you're in a class and you're like, you know what, I think this would be better if X, then that's where that goes to Dave. Dave is allowed to give feedback, and then that's how we're going to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's where I said at the holiday party, which, always get uncomfortable talking in front of crowds like that, but we're trying to make the place better. There's things that we're doing to this building to make the gym better in the next year. There are things that we're doing to our staff, again, to make the gym better. And this is going to be part of what we do to make the gym better. And we told the coaches about it. They're all going to get one before the new year. And to give them also a written document helps to look back on, because we forget what things say. Sometimes things get lost in tone, where we can, hey, I'm going to look back on these reports in 6 months and be like, hey, Sam, did you fix X, Y, and Z, or is this still a problem? Now you can be like, all right, what's up? What's going on? So I wrote down, I have 6 things. I didn't write down every single element to the coaching eval template that I'm using, but here are the 5 or 6 biggest ones that I think we all have a right to, members and as well, to evaluate a coach. Because I know members evaluate coaches all the time. We get, oh, this is my favorite coach. Oh, I hate this coach's class. Even that, to me, it's not good. That's not an evaluation of a coach, because we don't really tailor the gym to any individual person. If we did, we'd be driving ourselves nuts. But I do think, especially a seasoned veteran in CrossFit, their words, they do matter when it comes to evaluating a coach. But I want to make sure you know what to evaluate. First thing is by far the most important. It's the personality component. Their level of care for others, their selflessness, their servant attitude, and the connecting with a variety of people. So these are pretty basic elements that are not easy to find in people, but to me, it's you have it or you don't. It's hard to fake it for a long time. It's hard to fake it in an environment like this. The one I really want to touch on is the servant attitude. To me, I think a lot of people want to become a coach because they want to be in charge. They want to do things their way. They do want to help. They want to be a dictator. I think the best coaches out there, they do know when to be the dictator, when to be loud and set rules, all that blah, blah, blah stuff, right? I think the best coaches are servant attitude. They're servant-based. You're there to serve people, especially in a business like this where people are paying money to come here and work out. You're now kind of like their waiter. At a restaurant, you're there to serve them. You're not there to only control them. Yes, you're trying to change their movement on a snatch or help them progress to a bar muscle up or their first pull-up. Absolutely. But you're there to serve. And I think that can be easily seen in a person. Do you view yourself as when you're coaching, Sam, do you view yourself as serving the Thursdays 5, 6 a.m.?
Yes. My goal is to provide the best experience for them that they can have, or help them get that if I can, to help them get better, avoid injury, because by Thursday, they're pretty tough. And then
this Thursday.
Right. And to have a good time and feel good by the time they've gone. And that's all my goals are. Like, I mean,
you control a lot of that. You do as a coach.
Absolutely. You set the tone. You how you connect with people. This is what CrossFit calls relationship building. And if you're not good at connecting about help, like knowing how to, like you said, serve people in that relationship building business, then you're not a good coach. And I've seen this in other boxes. I don't know if I've really seen it here in terms of issues, but I will say this. That's why I don't love things that tend to put coaches above athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've always talked about, how do you get people to come in on time? 10 burpees every minute you're late. Like, I understand why people want to do that as a coach, but I also understand, listen, that means I'm a dictator, and I'm like, you get punished. And I never like that.
Yeah.
Because
you're my bitch.
Yeah.
Like, go do 10 burpees.
Right. Like, so most of what I try to do as a coach is to make people feel comfortable and good. And if you want to call that being a servant, that's fine. It's like I said, like you said, as long as I'm not thinking about me, I'm thinking about, how is my class doing? What is it going to be like? Like, that's important.
Connecting with a variety of people. This is something I look for. Everyone always says, you always looking for the next coach or looking for a coach, right? One thing I do observe is if someone I am looking at as a potential coach, how do they connect with not just their friends, but everyone in that gym? I always tell our coaches, like, do not be the person that's coming here and you're always clinging to the same person every time. It's a bad look, and it sets a bad tone for everybody else, right? Can you show up to a Saturday partner workout and literally be cool with no matter who the coach has put with you? Like, I texted Mike Del Toro all the time on Friday nights. I'm like, bro, put me with whoever you want tomorrow. Put me with someone new. I want that because I want the coach, and I think I want to evaluate this with coaches, right? How well do you connect with every single kind of person at that gym? Because from the outside perspective, you might look at this like white suburbia, like everyone's just the same person in Bergen County and Midland Park, Ridgewood, Glen Rock, Wyckoff. I think it's a very wide variety of walks of life in this gym, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right. A coach should be able to connect, find a way to connect. And that is a skill. Not everyone has it.
Yeah.
That they can have a conversation with anyone in that gym and at some point find some common ground, be able to relate to them, ask the right questions, know where to push, where not to push. And that to me is an important personality trait to a coach.
Yeah. It's interesting because you have a skill. I know you love really good athletes. You love people who perform really well.
Yeah.
But you also have a good way of connecting with the newbies, the ones who are kind of scared to come into the gym, who are worried about, can I even do a movement or even the scaled version of the movement? Am I going to, and that's a skill that I think a great coach in terms of relationship building can do. It's not about, wow, can you really connect to the dude who's snatching 225 and, doing 50 bar muscle ups unbroken?
Yep.
It's, can you work with the athlete who can't even go upside down for a scaled wall walk,
right?
Who is afraid of a barbell, like that, especially since we have a lot of pretty new athletes, like being an athlete a coach who cares and understands those athletes, that's probably as important, if not more important, than connecting to your elite athletes in some ways.
Coaches, remember where you came from, right? Remember who and what you were when you came here as an athlete, because none of us came in doing muscle ups and snatching and moving well, right? A lot of us didn't know what to do. Like we have videos of all of us when we first started it. They were train wrecks. And I think some coaches will lose track of that, because they've been doing it 8 years. And like, this person can't even do a strict press. Like this person can't even hold a front rack. Like, what do I do? You have to be able to rewind back to your early days of CrossFit and be able to, like, all right, I need to remember what I was like when I started and relate to this person. That will mean the world to that person if you can really help them at the start. As we always say, it's hard to start at an established gym. It really is. Next part, this is a big one for me. This has grown on me over the past year or two. Do you love CrossFit, coaches? And I'm saying the workouts, do you research some of this stuff on your own? How much knowledge of CrossFit do you have? Do you know the landscape of CrossFit? Like, do you know who the CEO is? Do you know who they're hiring? Kayla. But do you know, the Open is starting February 29th, or on February 26th, are you going to be like, oh, the Open's coming up? I don't want to put too much pressure on a coach of how many times do you work out per week, because there's a lot of reasons behind that. But I will say this. A CrossFit coach should be working out with CrossFit classes if they're healthy, period. That shouldn't be debatable. What can be debated is how often, and should you be doing stuff on your own? Can you be doing stuff on your own because of X, Y, and Z, right? We all have reasons. I do it sometimes as well. But I could say since we began CrossFit Bison in 2014, I would say 80% of my workouts have been with classes. Even when I had hired my own coach for $330 a month to be on my own program for competition reasons, I was still in classes 3 to 4 days per week. And I want to set that example, be that example, that if you coach at Bison or coach at a gym that I'm with, that should be part of your weekly routine if you're healthy. Do you love CrossFit?
You know what's funny is I pulled a CrossFit Journal article from an L4, and they list all the things that a great coach has. Mm-hmm. And love for CrossFit or enthusiasm was not in there, but it's probably one of the most important things that a coach needs. And I would actually probably write CrossFit and say, hey, listen, when you write your next one, mm-hmm. like, you better include this, because you can have all the knowledge in the world. You can know how to apply it. You can know how to build relationships. You can know, how to manage, all the stuff that we're going to be talking about. But if you don't truly love what you're doing, enthused about it, then all of that is a complete waste. Mm. And I have seen this professionally on the other side as surgeons. Like, if you don't love doing, or any job, honestly, you've probably known people at your own job where people are really good at it, they're burnt out, they just don't really find enthusiasm in it anymore. Mm-hmm. And when you get to that point, you're not, as a surgeon, you're really dangerous. Right. And as a coach, you need to step back and be like, why is it that I don't find that? And it's not like it's an on and off switch. That's the problem. Like, some people, can find little things here and there that kind of get them boosted up. Yep. Maybe it's their group or this or that, or, but like, if that flame is flickering for you, it's a bad sign.
It is.
And I see that time and time again. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what it is in your life or in anyone else's life where you don't have that enthusiasm, but you have to find it. I've seen it in athletes. You've seen athletes. We see OGs, they get burnt out.
Yeah, we talk about burnout a lot.
All the time. And we see it in coaches. And I'm like, listen, maybe it's because I've done CrossFit for a while, but I'm a relatively new coach when it comes to stuff like that. Mm-hmm. That is still, like, if I ever lose that, like, anticipation for coaching, or that, like, I really want to do a good class or any of that, then I know, like, this isn't for me at that point.
Like, we have a coaches chat sometimes, and someone will throw a cue out there that we saw, and, like, it'll turn into a 20-minute conversation about pulling yourself underneath the barbell using the PVC and the J hooks, right? And, no, I'm not taking notes on who responds, who doesn't, again, because we should be on our phones less, period. And we talk about that often as well. But I do find it interesting that either in a chat like that, or if I'm at a competition and I'm around a bunch of people that coach, someone's like, wait, who's Hiller? I'm like, well, I don't want to pump Hiller up right now, because I don't always love what the content that he puts out there. But if you're into CrossFit, you should know who Andrew Hiller is. And, you're welcome for that shout out if you ever hear that. You should know who Savan is. You should know that Dave Castro has been director of the games, CEO, fired. Now he's back, running the games again. RX Plus version of this, he gives the weekly updates, every 15-minute video on his YouTube channel. And he really dives into a lot of detailed oriented stuff with CrossFit. And I'm not going to tally who watches them, right? I don't think I've ever asked a coach if they watch them. But if you come to the gym and be like, hey, did you hear about X, Y, and Z? Did you hear that Brooke Wells left Proven and now she's with Hard Works Pays Off? That to me is like, all right, you're in this stuff. And like, all right, Dave, I don't like the sport. I don't want to pay attention to Andrew Hiller and Brooke Wells. All right, then come in and tell me, like, hey, Dave, there's an L1 in Waldwick in a couple weeks. Did you know that? Like, I was surfing and I was following these Instagram accounts. Or, hey, I found this new cue for the deadlift. We should try to implement this next time. That to me says you're not only here for the couple hours that you're required to be. You're actually in a CrossFit lifestyle. And a part of the reason why I've hired every person on our staff was they were in it at that time. The fire can go up and down based on your life situations. But like Sam said, you should have the emotional intelligence to be able to tell that your light is flickering. And it's on you to do one of two things. Find it, light it back up, find a way, or be honest and upfront that the fire's not there anymore. Because a lot of people are going to feed off your love for CrossFit or not.
Every class.
Yep. Now, we've just been talking for about 15 minutes on this stuff, 10 minutes on it. We haven't even talked about coaching. A coach needs to be eval'd on how well they coach. I don't think it's the most important component. We have some really good coaches on our staff right now that I think for the first year, and myself included, my first year, I was awful at coaching classes. I was never on time. I had terrible warm-ups. I was not good at seeing problems with movement, right? That doesn't make you a good coach. Eventually you have to get there, but that doesn't make you a good coach, especially early on. But let's talk about some of these things, all right? I could have done an entire podcast on just this, but I didn't want to make this the focus. This is just part of it. Here are a couple of things I want you to focus on with coaching. Again, members, you can kind of take notes on this as well if you want to eval coach. Timeliness, starting and ending on time, organization, all right, just in terms of the format of the class, the equipment that's being used, logistics, that's a huge thing when you coach big classes. Your cues, right, for movement correction, warm up, how are you prepping people to get ready for a workout, and then intra-WOD action, all right? I want to touch on a few of these, all right? To me, timeliness, organization, logistics, those all kind of tie together. Sam, you coach big classes, so I think you've actually developed faster because you had to. You're being thrown into the fire.
Yeah.
I'll say this because I coach all classes now, morning, midday, night. Mornings are the hardest. The 5, 6 a.m., it's the hardest 2 classes of the day to coach. Saturdays can be thrown into that mix as well. What was that like for you to go from coaching at night, right? That's when you started off, very small classes.
Middays and then nights.
To coaching, probably the most intense 2-hour period in our gym. From group management perspective.
Right. Group management skills are critical when you have large classes. If you have like 6 or 5, you
have some margin to play with.
Right, and I love that, but
me too. I do.
Yeah, but when you do 25 or 30 some days, like, it's not so much about the knowledge application, seeing, correcting. It's about, can I provide a reasonable experience for 30 people and get them out on time? And I've gotten burnt where I wasn't very good about time management. And regardless of how good I coached the workout or how I was correcting people, listen, if you don't get them out on time, they are pissed.
They're pissed, and the next class is pissed.
And the next class is pissed because the parking situation is a nightmare coming in and out. So I have sat there several times and apologized to my classes like, I'm really sorry. It was not supposed to run this late. And then I cursed Dave for programming 25-minute workout or 30-minute workout.
25-minute running workouts where people are still outside of the cab.
With like 5 different equipment things, and everyone's like with their toys. And I'm like, jeez. So like,
I gave you a layup this week, by the way.
I love it, actually. It's a good one. And I wasn't going to work out today, but I was like, De Silva called me. I was like, all right, I'm going to do this one because it was a tempting one. I like it. But I will say this. You do learn trial by fire is one of the best ways of learning. And when you have to figure out how to get 30 people moving, you get really efficient. You're like, okay, I'm not going to use this PVC pipe if I can sub something else in.
Exactly.
Or if I am going to use the PVC pipe, I'm going to use it for everything. I'm going to use it for the warm-up, the demo, the stretching, everything. Like you start figuring out how to get, like, I'm not going to make them get all the toys first because that's going to be too long. Let's do this part, then they'll pull that stuff out.
If you could save 2 minutes here, 1 minute there, it makes all the difference.
Right. So that, honestly, that comes down to experience. So the more you coach those classes, the better off you're going to be.
Yep. And I think the biggest red flag from an eval perspective, right, because that's what we're talking about, how to eval a coach, if you see them making the same mistakes, like week after week, month after month, year after year, even in some cases, despite the fact that they know they made that mistake, and now they're getting an eval from the head coach, owner, whatever you want to call them, that's the red flag. because you can't always be like, you tried hard, like, good job. Like, if your 5 a.m. class is constantly ending the WOD at 5:57 and we're telling you to try to be done by 5:50, 5:52 latest, right? And a year later, it's 5:55 more often than not, you need to make a change. And if not, maybe you can't coach those classes, right? Because that's a really important element to the coaching. What we have a coach that does really well here. She'll coach a busy 4:15 sometimes. Like, same thing, 25, 27 people, right? She will get that person's zone prepped completely before the WOD starts. Like, walk around, they'll throw a band in every zone, throw a PVC in every zone, because that shaves off 5 minutes. It's amazing. You tell a class to get a red band and PVC, it will take 5 minutes.
Yes, it will.
Because they chat and you want that, but you take that out. So that's what being organized and forecasting, and that coach I know has been burned before, where like train wreck schedule really late, and she knew that would take off a few minutes. So that's what you want to see when you evaluate a coach, give a critique, and now what do you do to fix the problem, okay? In terms of actually coaching, like the warm-up, and like, we have a podcast coming up with a guest about warming up. I don't want to get too deep into that. But here's two things. One thing, the intra-WOD action. What do I even mean by that? Okay. If I gave myself an eval, this would be my biggest red flag that I need to fix, is you have your phone out too much during a class. I'm not good at setting up my playlist prior to the class. I just kind of pick one, and then if I get to a song I don't like, I pull my phone out, I find a song, do that. Or you get to the end of the playlist, now there's no music, and people are freaking out, like, put the music on. So I'm like scrolling through, Sonos is slow sometimes, so it like freezes, right? That perception can be bad. If someone's going to look at me wanting a deadlift cue, and I'm on my phone scrolling, you don't know what I'm doing. I might be looking at scores from last night's games.
Right.
So, but that look is bad. And I can fix that by setting up the music prior to. I could cue 15 songs or get a playlist that's, hey, every song on here is good. Like, we're good to go. Don't even have to look at it once. And then what happens when you have your phone out? Someone texts you, hey, Dave, I'm running late for the 6 a.m. So I start texting someone back, or Ash will text me about Brock. Now I'm texting during a class. Again, the perception is bad. I might be able to justify it, but I think the more you keep your phone in your pocket or even away from you, while the WOD is going on, I'm not going to tell a coach, especially with coaches that have families, that you can't have your phone on you. But maybe the second the WOD starts, it's on the box and you're walking around the gym. That's an example of an intra-WOD action. Another one would be: are you sitting on a box chilling while they're suffering through an 18-minute workout? I've had athletes tell me that before. That, hey, my coach sat on the box the whole time. Hey, maybe that coach is hurt, or maybe that coach is lazy, not feeling it today. That's an intra-WOD action. I think a coach should just be making laps the entire workout, to make sure that they show the people, hey, I'm looking at you. I'm paying attention to you, because that is what a lot of people want.
Absolutely. I notice when a coach is coming up around me, I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, wait, am I doing okay? Am I not?
The funniest thing I ever do, it's like clockwork. Like, if you walk around and you walk behind someone that's rowing, and you know that they're noticing that you're walking, their pace goes from like 1,000 to 1,400.
I'm like, oh, I was going to take a little more rest before I pick up the barbell. I guess I'm going to have to go a little faster. But yeah, I think what you do in the WOD is very important as a coach. And I try to move around as much as I can. Mm-hmm. I try to see how everyone is moving. I think my biggest deficiency for sure, and this is something that I want to coach some smaller classes too, because the whole knowledge, application, teaching, seeing, correcting, this is what CrossFit L1 and L2 is. They hammer so hard. Like, they don't care about so much of the other stuff, but it's like, can you see faults? Can you correct them? Yep. And I have always had an issue with that, and I'm still having issues, and I need, and listen, I understand. I'm giving myself a little grace, because when you have 30 people, you're not going to sit there and teach, see, correct all these people.
And I'll take some of the responsibility too, Sam. If you had someone giving you evals more often, I think you'd be better right now as well. So I could take that as part of my responsibility.
Right. So I know that as a deficiency, that's what I have, and I need to practice on maybe smaller groups so that I can apply it better to a bigger group. But in the middle of a WOD, it's a challenge for me to say, all right, I see a fault here, and this is what I would suggest how to correct it.
Cool.
I work on it, but it's something that every coach, you shouldn't be looking at your phone. You shouldn't be texting. You
Scrolling.
Scroll. You shouldn't just be sitting on a box. Like, you should be applying what you know as a coach to help your athletes.
The only time I would say the phone is okay is if you're videotaping someone for critiquing. We've gone back and forth with the debate. Should a coach be filming a class and then putting it on Instagram? Like, I do that. Liz has done that a lot in the past. I think every coach has done this, right? Where you film something in class, you put it on Instagram. And that's debatable. That could probably be a topic for another time, because you are trying to market the gym and run a business at the same time. And I do think people love seeing themselves on Instagram. They do. They repost that stuff. That's free marketing there. But that's the only time I really would say it's okay. If they're videoing someone, that would be the time I really think it's the only reason to have your phone out. The next two are kind of, I'm going to skip over the next one because it kind of ties into the next bullet point, the attention to detail. And here we go. The spelling of names, your music variety, the avoiding predictability to a point, right? This is a problem for coaches that have coached for a long time. They are set in their ways. They want to do They want to do what works, and it works, and it provides a good product, a good experience, right? But I think it's a bad look for a coach that if every time you squat, you're doing the same squat warm-up, even if it's a warm-up that works, all right? Because I'll tell you what, it probably doesn't work for everyone, so you should be switching it up. And again, I think it shows members that you are trying to find different ways without being over the top. I hate the coaches that do warm-ups that is just like so over the top, and it just takes way too much away from the actual class. So don't try too hard on trying to impress the class with a fancy warm-up. But I have coaches that do this at a really high level. They will find different ways to warm the coach. That's something I do. I don't know if I do this at a high level. Maybe I need to be evaluated. Maybe members, I get evaluated all the time, actually. So, but you can tell me, like, hey, I wish you did something a little different. Like, but if you're deadlifting and you're doing the same stretch for the same 3 weeks in a row, what if there's people in that class that don't get a benefit from that stretch, and it's going to give this image perception that you're just kind of checking boxes here rather than finding ways to make yourself better?
This is really important, and I have found I've gotten into ruts too. Like, I like 3 major stretches that I always try to do, and I'm like, okay, I really have to change it up sometime. Sometimes I'll go back to different things, but yes, if you were the athlete and you had to come in and it was always the same,
it sucks.
It stinks. Yeah. And I feel like it's as a coach, it's incumbent on you to spend some time and think about the athlete experience. I know, for example, there are certain coaches who, all right, we're doing these 3 movements: double unders, cleans, and box jump overs. And so they pull out their teaching points for all 3, and they're always the same. But you know what? It's this workout's really a box jump over workout. The cleans and the double unders really don't almost play any role.
Right.
So why are you teaching so much about the double unders? Like, really focus.
Yeah, it's almost like you're a robot.
Right. You're focus on the box. Like, look at the WOD. Like, literally look at the WOD and figure out what the stimulus is and coach to that. Don't just coach the 3 movements. Coach to the stimulus, which is why I do the workout a lot, because
it does help.
It really helps a lot for me to understand what the stimulus is for that workout. And we have coaches at our gym who don't have to do the WOD to figure out what the stimulus is. Right. They know this is the sticking point right here. You got to really focus on the heavy cleans, because that's a big deal on this workout. I'm not there, which is why I use that as a crutch. But I know when I get better, like, I should be able to look at workouts, mix up my and you don't even always have to mix up your warm-ups. It's mixed up by definition that the workout is different. Like, you might have done a heavy power clean workout last week and this one, but it's totally different. That was an EMOM. This one is like a 10-minute like speed workout. Like
Right.
that your warm-up is going to be really different for that just by virtue of the way the workout is.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
you need to look at the workout, you need to coach to the workout, and you need to custom the experience to that workout. And if you just focus on that, you're gonna provide a much, much better experience for your athlete.
Yep. No, those are great words and really sound advice. I don't even have anything to add to it, really. How about some other little things beyond coaching, though? I have a critique on a coach's report right now. Spelling names wrong on the whiteboard. A lot of them. Like in a matter of 4 classes, like 15 names are spelled wrong. And I don't think it would make someone angry. I mean, I have had some people like come over and like, I used to write Michelle Frusciato's name back in the early days with 2 L's, and she would come and like, oh, it's 1 L. Dave, it's 1 L. Next up, Dave, it's 1 L. And then one time she came over and erased one of the L's. I think from that point on, I've never spelt her name wrong. And you can get some grace with this, like Colin spelled with 1 L instead of 2. Corey does not have an E before the Y. Like, you can get it wrong, but I'll tell you what, with Zen Planner now, you should never get that thing
right.
Because it's literally written on there,
right.
But we're programmed. We do this a lot. We have it in our head that it's spelt a certain way. Here's another one that I think part of the reason why we write names on the whiteboard is to connect coach and athlete. Like, I am writing that Sam is here today. You know, he might not know that an athlete might be like, he doesn't even know I'm here. I'm just sitting in the corner in zone 15, and he hasn't even said anything to me. I wrote your name on this, and I wrote your name and your score on the board, right? There's some thought that goes into that. That means a lot to me, and that's why, like, we've been offered, like, hey, let's get a keyboard and type them. It'll look cleaner on a TV screen. It probably would, and it'd be a lot easier to erase that damn whiteboard. All right, you just delete it, but I like writing, even with my bad handwriting, and some coaches have really bad handwriting too. That means something when you write their name down. But if you're writing that name incorrectly over and over, even if the person's not sensitive, it does send a little bit of a message, right? We have, at some point, I think we had like 7 Lauras in the gym.
Yes.
Laura. You can't write that on the board. I'm sorry, you can't. You got to write Laura C, Laura L, Laura M. You have to. Right now we have 2 Rob SCH. There's Rob Schick and Rob Scher.
Yes.
So their name is Rob. And then I'm like, all right, just write Rob SC. No, I can't write SC. SCH. Can't write that either. So the other day I'm writing Rob SCHE. And then I'm writing Rob SCHI. Okay. I said that this is attention to detail.
Yes.
It's not going to make or break your ability as a coach, but I'll say this, I'm the one doing the evals. I will notice every single time you do that.
Attention to detail is what the focus is here.
Right.
And I have made mistakes. For a long time, I misspelled Jasmine's name.
Yeah.
Like ZS. I now take the 10 seconds it takes to look at it.
Yep.
Bennett, is it 2 N's, 2 T's? I can't remember. I got to look. It's always about attention to detail. That's why, and it's about a connection to the athletes. That's why when I start the class, I test myself and
You're the only one that does that anymore. I'm like afraid to do it.
I need to, because it's a test for me to see if I can remember and connect the name to every face every time.
People appreciate that too. I've had people critique me and say, Dave, you used to say our names, you no longer do. Like, that matters to people.
Yes. I don't always get it right. Sometimes I called Nick Squire something else once, but
who cares about him?
My brain was like fogged a little bit. It was early, but I think whatever way you can find to pay your attention to the details, like you said, like on your like as a boss, like when you look at me, you got to say, is he really paying attention to the little things? And that's a little thing that it means a lot to someone. If you get their name wrong, like, it literally almost means like you don't care about them.
Right.
So you're right.
And lastly, this is something that's at the end of my eval for the coaches, and it's not even, hey, I'm going to evaluate this. Man, I'm spoiling this, aren't I? But whatever. That this is the last part of the coaching eval that everyone's going to get from CrossFit Bison is, if I came up to you at any point in class, because I'm going to start doing that more, is come to classes not to work out, just to watch you coach. And if I came up to you and asked, why'd you do that? You should always have an answer. Every single thing you do, whether it's a cue, whether it's a warm-up, whether how you explain a workout, whether why you put that person there and not there. You know how we are with zones with pull-up bars and boxes and wall space. So like, we have some people that, here's an example. We have some people that do not go upside down.
Yeah. Which is fine.
No, absolutely. Yeah. If anything, I prefer it, right? A coach will in a big class, a coach will sometimes put that person in a zone with available wall space. There's a few zones in our gym that don't have ideal wall space. Yeah. You should always put that person in that zone that's not going to use the wall.
Right.
Why waste it on someone that's not using the wall?
Right.
Right? Like, why'd you put that person there? Why'd you partner these two people together? Those are things, like, there should be a why. And, like, I challenge myself on this every single time I warm a class up, especially. Why I write the workout, which I'm unique in that fashion, right? So I'm the one programming. Why? Ask yourself, coaches, why am I doing this? And I actually think that will provide some self-eval for yourself.
Yes. You should always have a purpose for everything that you do as a coach. Even if it's sometimes a little bit of a frivolous reason, like the way I program my music for the class, sometimes it's just because, like, I want to hear a song that I haven't heard for a while. So if you ask me, like, why, it's like, yeah, I just want to, like, throw it up. I haven't heard 90s stuff. I figured some people might like it, so I'll throw it in there.
Yeah.
It's not always, it doesn't have to be, like, a dead serious
No,
reason.
It doesn't have to be philosophical at all. But like, I would love that to be an answer. Why'd you play this playlist today? I don't know. We have a lot of people that grew up in the 80s and 90s, and they like this kind of stuff. And honestly, those days should probably get a lot of positive feedback.
Probably, yeah.
But again, you know what I think it is, now that I'm just talking about it? It makes, one thing I want to trust about a coach is that they're thoughtful. They're putting a lot of thought into running that class. They're not just here checking the box. And that's probably the biggest thing, now that I'm talking, I can really understand that, is, are you a thoughtful coach? Are you a thoughtful person, right? So that's going to sum up how to evaluate, how I'm evaluating our coaches at CrossFit Bison. There's a few things I want to talk about in terms of what to avoid when you're evaluating a coach, though, because I think that can be, there's only a couple here, but I think that's something just as important. When you're evaluating a coach, you have to make sure that you're coming from an unbiased perspective. Like, it's not just about what you want, right? It's not just about what you like. You have your favorite coaches. I have my favorite coaches. So do all of our members. That doesn't necessarily mean that coach is doing a good job, really. Like, if the best thing you could tell me about a coach is that they play your favorite music, that coach is probably not doing a good job. So that's why you can't always use every opinion. You can't weigh every opinion the same when it comes to evaluation of a coach. But your own bias, like the style of the class, the music, the personal desire, all this stuff, like the pull-up bars, the boxes, like who you're partnering with on Saturdays, that can't be a part of your eval.
Yes.
You agree?
Yeah, I cringe when people tell me, oh, I love your music so much, because I'm like, if that's really how you're...
How if I snatch them out?
Right, like, then, if that's the best part about me, then I'm a pretty sucky coach. But you're right, it's hard to eliminate your bias. And you're never going to eliminate it completely. You picked all of the coaches.
Yeah.
You chose them based on your knowledge, but also your biases as well. So there was a certain sort of orientation bent, sort of groupthink that you were looking for when you picked your coaches. So you might emphasize one quality about coaching more than another. And so when you talk, like, if someone else were to evaluate this whole group of coaches, they might evaluate and place more importance on another factor as opposed to this factor. Like, if we had if we had Adrian Bosman come in and evaluate the coaches, I bet you his evals would be totally different from your evals.
Very true.
And so, of course, you're going to be biased. But you know what? This is your gym.
Yeah.
You're the owner. Right. You run it. So if you own a gym, you have your coaches, feel free to judge them and evaluate them based on what you think is important. Right. It may be right. It may not be 100% right, but it's your business.
Be consistent with it.
And that's the other thing. Like, you can't be like, well, I really like Sam, so I know he's not so good at this, so I'm going to let it slide. But, this guy's been kind of he's been on my crap list, so I'm going to just like
hammer him.
Right. So, like, you're right. You got to take some of that out of it and really, and it's hard. That's probably one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah. And just like in addition to that, the lack of ability to separate friendship and business, if you have a really hard time doing that and you're not aware of it, you probably should stay out of the eval process, right? Like Sam just said, if you have a really good coach, but you're not friends with them and you're hammering him, you're not good friends, you're hammering him, but then you have a bad coach, but you're really good friends with him and you let him or her kind of skate by, that's a red flag for the evaluator, that you probably shouldn't be doing this. You probably should give this to an unbiased party. Someone else should be in charge of evaluating the coaches, because, you know, I'll put this out there before I give it to the coaches. Like, there's no friendship included in these. Like, it's almost as if I don't know you guys. I'm just going to evaluate you guys. And you have to try your best not to get personally offended by it. Right. How often should a coach be evaluated?
Ackerman and those guys say monthly. They said it depends on, they also kind of split up between part-timers and full-timers.
Part-time.
Yeah. So I would say, I thought that was a lot when I listened to them.
Yeah.
I would say as often as you feel like you are helping them, you know?
I want to give them time to make corrections too. Because I think some of these issues that coaches have, it's not fair to expect them to fix it in a month. In some cases,
I'm only coaching 2, maybe 5 classes a week at tops.
Right.
If I'm doing a Saturday too, that's not that many reps.
Right.
I need more reps before you can say, okay, he's getting better or worse at this.
So I've tallied up. This is part of the eval. I've tallied up how many classes every coach has coached in 2023.
Oh.
And it's an interesting number. It's very interesting to me to see that, and it helps me move forward with some of the stuff I need to get better at as running the staff. But I think instead of saying time, like I was thinking twice a year, but if you want to say an amount of classes, I think every 40 classes, 40 to 50 classes, a coach should be evaluated.
That's a great way of putting it.
That gives. I mean, that for a full-time coach would be monthly.
Yeah.
Close to monthly.
Mm-hmm.
Part-time, that could take, most of you part-timers, that would be about 4 to 6 months.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think, and that gives you an objective, like, hey, you've had 50 classes to fix this stuff and it's still a problem. We need to have a more serious conversation now.
That also means the part-timers, it's going to be longer and harder for us to get better.
Yeah, it is.
We just don't have enough reps as the full-timers.
Yep.
But on the other hand, the full-timers better effing get better a lot faster.
Yeah, like I could see a 5 to 6 week eval for a coach.
Yeah.
Every 5 to 6 weeks. And it doesn't have to be extensive and long. It could just be like, hey, did you fix these 2 things? Or is it still a problem? All right, thank you guys. I hope you had a good time. Owners or head coaches, coming from someone that hasn't done it in official fashion like this, don't make the mistake I made. I think you should get on it ASAP. Start a process right now, moving into the new year. Maybe put it on your New Year's resolution list. Coaches, don't be afraid to be evaled. It's probably at some point the only way you're going to be better as a coach. So if you truly want to get better as a coach, you have to get these evals and swallow some hard pills. And be comfortable being uncomfortable. And all of us are uncomfortable when we get critiqued, myself included. But CrossFit has taught us this. You will never get better if you avoid discomfort. And members, I think you guys have a voice in this. You guys are around the coaches more often than some of the owners and head coaches are. You see them in action. You see them at their best. You see them at their worst. And if you are good at removing some of the stuff we said to avoid, your personal bias, your friendships, I think there's a lot of value in your words. So if you have things to share, confidential, with the person that's doing the evaluating, I think your words should be heard and you shouldn't hesitate to reach out. All right. Thank you guys. See you next week.
Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Herd Fit podcast. Be on the lookout for next week's episode.